Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Kula, Maui, Hawaii. June 30th, 2021. Let me begin with a few announcements regarding the global virtual gathering this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Here in this sacred nature reserve, in this exquisite sacred temple. The few people who have registered that we've limited based upon COVID and the necessities to abide by Maui County rules explicitly. Look forward to meeting you in person. And for the world at large, may I invite you to invite your friends for this very special weekend. From 10 a.m. to noon, and then from 1 until 3, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I am looking forward to diving in much more intimately to the topics of my life and to learn more about the issues that you face in your life and to learn and to grow together. So I'm really looking forward to this weekend. Today and tomorrow will be my final live streams. Monday next week, I have other engagements. I will no longer be doing the live stream in the morning, but will resume, God willing, on the following weekend. Welcome to today, wherever you may be. Topic, presence. Presence and realness. Difficult topics to even bother with. Like talking about authenticity, as if there is some state that's authentic versus inauthentic. Presence. We may say that presence is all that we have. It's the gift of our mind and body, our voice, our sound, our energy. I dare even use the word, our frequencies. That which we emote, that which we receive. Having a remarkably high regard for the quality of our presence through our eye, our ear, our nose, our body, our touch, our mind, the energy that we put forth is the most sacred thing that I can see as a human born into this world, is to honor, to refine, to grow in knowledge with, if you will. The qualities of consciousness that we inherently are born with, but often neglect based upon conditions and education. But presence to me is about the study, the felt experiential intimacy of being in now-time reality with being, body, sensations, and the qualities of my own state of mind. And I would encourage you, should you feel the need to be reminded in your own way, what are the most precious qualities of consciousness that you admire in other people and in yourself? And therein lies the working composite, if you will, of what presence means to you on an experiential level. What are the states of mind? And dignity and conscience come to mind, authenticity and integrity. Who can say enough about the quality of patience and mindful presence and poise and balance and authenticity and playfulness and satire and humor, and all the ways in which we orchestrate and play, and the aesthetic artistry of our minds and bodies in relationship to one another. Let's call that presence. And realness would be the integrity, it seems to me, the integrity in which we bring forth qualities of being and present them and interrelate with them through shared space. Years back in the monastery, I was remembering just before walking in here, my best friend at the time, he passed away not long after I ordained. His name was Ukundala. And I first met him at the well outside of our our rooms in the Mahasi Satanayekta in Rangoon, Burma. And there I was, a young monk of only a few days. I had recently just shaven my head. I was donned the mahogany robes. And there I was dipping cold water with the bucket and throwing it on one's own body and washing and bathing in the sunlight. And out comes this Burmese man, and we all wear our lower robes when we bathe, but the upper part is naked. And we're in silence. This is the rule and the rules within the monastic order, that one lives and abides in mindful silence. And you're mindfully bathing in this incredibly cold water. And I felt vulnerable and naked in this environment coming from New York. And here I was doing the very best I could to be aware of the cold water and the light and the sun and the frailty of my own heart and mind and body and the uncertainty of coming unglued based upon all the various things that have been so comfortably natural to me. Your hair, cut your hair and you'll see how unnatural it is not to have hair. But at the same time, that nakedness is a huge vitality, that you can just stand in the truth of who you are, naked in the mirror of your own mindfulness, and just basically say yes, yes, but it's not so easy, is it? And there I was bathing, and Ukundala came out. I didn't even know his name at the time. He began to bathe. He is a seasoned monk, as I understood it. And he was much older than I. And he paused after taking a bucket of water and looked over at me. And in perfect English, he said, "What are those scars on your head from?" And years back when I was 15, almost 16, just got my license, I unfortunately drove directly into a telephone pole at high speed and went through the windshield. And it was a very traumatic event that landed me in hospital and bandaged and operated on with an extreme undiagnosed traumatic brain injury and nearly 300, 400, 500 sutures in my head and scalp, piecing it back together. Obviously, I survived. Something did, at least. And I've had other operations post-surgery, the initial surgery, reconstruction surgery and various things, but I was never bald. And not many people at that stage of my life were asking me about my scars. And I had a very deep, I don't know how to describe it particularly, but a very deep sense of complexity around the word scar, and it affected my presence. It affected my realness, among other things. And when questioned about it, what are those scars from? I realized that those scars, yet again, and I was 28 at this time, were impacted with shame, with fear, with self-doubt, with deeper energetics of stress, anxiety, and trauma, and hurt, and wrongness. I always felt that I wish I hadn't have been inebriated and lost control of a car and almost killed my best friend and nearly ruined my life. Certainly a radical interruption of extraordinary proportions. I was no longer the same individual from that accident. But I never really psychologically or spiritually understood the deeper impressions of my behaviors and my lives and my reactions and my past and my struggles and my conditions, very much like perhaps you in the discovery of how things influence the way in which we live and breathe and touch and communicate and feel and make love and dance and the priorities and the portraits, the ongoing portrait of our lives that's being sculpted based on past conditions, present time reactions, and the rare opportunities to mindfully unravel from the past and elevate into the present, into the future, that confluence. I did very little so-called unpacking of historical, psychological, emotional, anxiety, traumatic events. And Ukundala, a perfect stranger, what are those scars from? I don't know whether or not you, cliched as it might sound, have scars that we accommodate through mental and emotional posturing, through makeup, through clothing, through pretense, through fear, through uncertainty, through confusion. But my scars now, with the head shaven, were in full view. And they were very red at the time. This was quite a long time ago. And there were numerous interlacing, jagged looking, ugly scars, is the way I interpret it. Ugly scars. I had lost contact with the meaning of that word. But Ukundala there was like, where did you get these scars? And then he walked over to me and just looked at me right in the forehead. And I said, it was a terrible car accident when I was 15 years old. And then he asked, what happened? How? And I then stumbled into a bit of the modified narrative. Oh, I was just going home after a party with my best friend and just lost sight of the road, with a little bit of a glib humor in it. And he said, wow, that's really what happened? And I realized it was just something unreal about my comment. Here I was in a monastery to be mindful, to be enlightened, to be truthful, to be authentic, here I was embodied in a monkdom. And I said, I don't know what you do in this country, but I was drunk on alcohol. And he asked me, how long had you been drinking? I don't mean that night. You were only 15 and a half years old? I said, I'd been drinking since I was 11. I'd been smoking since I was 9. Wow, what a different life. And something in the realness of the rapport was, I would say, my entry into the Mahasi Satanayekta. I'd come to meditate, to train under the guidance of these enormously competent meditation teachers. And here it was, a perfect Burmese stranger is inviting me into presence. The serendipity of transformation beyond the ideals of where it's best enacted. The old cliche of the journey is more important than the arrival. And here I stand and sit, and I'm thinking about Ukundala and my interaction. And then I kind of quipped back at him. And this just came to me for the first time in decades. And I looked at him, and in his chest, I never even thought of this, but in his chest, he had this long scar from like his neck down below his sternum. And I asked him, well, what is your scar from? And he, matter-of-factly, with a very elegant poise, said, I had open heart surgery when I was quite young. And then pointed to another scar wrapping around his rib cage to his back, some organ that was malfunctioning. And there was something I felt likely projected, very liberated in his scar not being impacted with ugly, not being impacted with something having gone wrong. And there was a meeting there of intimacies that awakened in me a sensitivity, if you will, that the Dhamma, and I'm going to get into the last half here, the Dhamma is so beautifully interwoven with everything. If we so choose to play in the interweaving of emotion, psychology, and cognition and consciousness with concepts and physicality and fluids and air and oxygen and neutrinos and particles and waves and all the ways in which we describe this thisness that we're embedded. And there's something that the psychedelic, the psilocybin, the meditative, the DMT, the MEO, the God molecules, the goddess and the God in all of us, everywhere, all times, in every way, the simultaneity of touch and voice and sound and freedom. And enlightenment is not a state there, it's everywhere, the luminosity of the unconditioned within the conditioning. Define words, and here we sit and talk presence. Is there anything other than presence, except we get into the tunnel configurations of myopia, the narratives of tunnel vision. Although it seems infinite oneness, it's a tunnel vision to be so preoccupied with a belief rather than open-heartedness. The dynamic of an intimate, resonant reciprocity of what? Leading with our best. Now, coming to the last half, I wrote down a few things that, please allow me, I rarely write things down, but I did write some things down today, and I want to save most of what I want to say for this weekend. And who could say enough about presence and realness? But there were 5 things that I wanted to say this. 5 things in my own personal life that, how would I call them? They're the elements, the cognitive touchstones of my Dhamma. Many of you know I use the word Dhamma a lot. I don't use it probably enough, but allow me just here in this moment to again, especially those who may be tuning in or will tune in later, Dhamma to me, the Buddhist Pali word or the Sanskrit word Dharma, almost the same meaning. 1, it points to direct experience, identical to the idea of wanting to eat. The idea is absolutely different than the actual preparation of the food and the eating. Of course, there's a concurrent circuitry of thought, intention, but nutrition doesn't come from the imagination of eating any more than bathing does. We go to the beach to be in the water. The idea of swimming in one's own mind, yes, perhaps there is some relationship, but it doesn't qualify for anything remotely equal to the power of lovemaking rather than the idea of lovemaking. Dhamma is the embodiment, the felt experiential radiant embodiment of consciousness within consciousness, deliberately enacted through states of mind that free it from fear, greed, and delusion, and bring it into greater intimacy with self, other, and mystery. So direct experience. Where could we ever say enough about the body? The arms, the eyes, the ears. Imagine the 6 senses. The eye, the ear, the nose, the body, the tongue, the mind being the 6th. And how often I've said, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it until I die, and perhaps you'll say it with me in chorus. Imagine. We talk about presence and realness. All it takes is not necessarily to meditate from now until the end of the moon, but to sensitize into the sacred. I'm going to speak more about that tomorrow. What is the sacred to me? But the sacred is the innate embodiment of consciousness within context. Take, for example, the eye. Without the eye, we can't see. Imagine if we were blind. Yes, we can try to see, but it's not the same as seeing, is it? A deep, 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 powerful translation of blindness into sight. Oh boy, the courage to do that. But all of a sudden, we're all of a sudden blind, and all of a sudden we have our eyes restored. Imagine the grace, the sacredness inherent in the restoration of sight. Could we say enough about that? We would weep. Our child, our daughter, our lover, our husband, our goddess, our God, lost his sight. And from some act of miraculous curing, sight was restored. What a celebration. A symphony on this island, in this world, in this cosmos. Sight has been restored. The same with the ear. Perhaps people can hear things on a deep psychic, intuitive, auditory level without the ear door. But all of a sudden, with the ear door, we can hear each other. We can hear sound. We can hear words. We can hear music. We can hear birds. We can hear sunlight. We can hear waves. We can hear the ocean. We can hear gods and goddesses. When that sound is lost, a tremendous loss. If it were restored by miracle and cure, by Dhamma, by love. The innateness is my point here. Dhamma is the innate embodiment of a sacred relationship to direct experience deliberately enacted for the betterment of self and other. That's the spiritual journey. We know that. But to live that means to embody deep reverence, as I can see it, for the quality of our presence. All of us take pride in how we walk, how we move, how we talk, what we wear, what we say, what we learn, what we let go of. The quality of our lives is often determined and evaluated by the quality of our relationships. Each of us, as we grow in spirit, in dharma, in psychology, in emotions, in all the collective intelligences that coexist with those different dimensions, we heightened our capacities for refinement. Presence is the direct Dhamma engagement of direct experience at the circuitry of consciousness with the senses, feeling the innate sacredness of being awake, alive, and hearing, seeing, touching, feeling. My best friend, Tom, passed away with a diagnosis of early stage Alzheimer's, mid-50s. To watch him in this intimate process of presence and realness. I knew him for so long. We were monks together. He was a DJ. He was a professor of English at Kyoto University. I introduced him to his partner, whom he married, Sandra. We were allies, family, brothers. We have people like that in our lives. And he was diagnosed one day because somehow there was a degree of forgetfulness in a number of different ways, and somehow it came to be that he was taken to a psychiatrist and a memory test was given, and there he was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. They took his driver's license on the way out the door. 4 years later, he's dead. I watched what is so embedded in the collective psyche. They call it cognitive decline. We refuse to participate in the narrative of decline. We found it, and we used the label, the Dharma of Alzheimer's, the awakening to deeper, more embedded memory fields that often based on conditioning and emotions and preoccupations with pretense and struggle and profit and privilege and doubt and livelihood and things that are familiar. We often sing the same song because it's memorized. But if you forget that and drop deeper into the improvisational music of your own jagged jazz, sometimes you can do something different than you've ever been trained to do. And Tom, in his Alzheimer's, found a radiant field of deep access to his Dhamma. He became eloquent in his expression of Dhamma, Dharma in cognitive, embodied reverential, respectful action. Meanwhile, his psychological, emotional abilities declined in the way in which his narratives and identity were most understood by family, friends, including me, and society. He went a little bit crazy. And I don't say that with a smile because he's dead. It was a disease, but it wasn't wrong. It happened because of existence. And in that process, he told me very intimately, ever since I've been diagnosed with this, most people, even friends, deep friends, think I'm crazy. And they look at me through the filter of me dying. Back to the well with Ukundala, with my scars and his scars, talking as brothers around the water in the sunlight, translating eternity into the present time phenomena of the sacred. Meditation and action. I'd come to enlighten myself through meditation, sitting, walking, eating, walking, bending. And here I was at the well on day 2, and a monk is asking me, how do you feel inside of your heart? Presence, realness, presence, realness, authenticity, intimacy, the dynamic of the sacred. The 5 qualities, and I'm going to close with this and resume tomorrow. Thank you for being in my life. The 5 qualities that determine how I see presence and realness. 1, rebirthing, not rebirthing, but rebirthing and rebirthing. Rebirthing was a concept that was introduced to me through the Buddha's teachings, and more recently, before my late teacher, the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita, passed away in 2016, in our dialogues in a book that we did together called Wisdom for the World, that he titled, along with Mindful Advice for the People of My Country of Myanmar. He introduced me to the concept of rebirthing as a way of somatically, energetically sculpting and releasing simultaneously into new identities, new personality structures rooted in the fidelity of Dhamma. He introduced me to the concept of rebirthing rather than being mindful all the time. It was something very dynamic, and when I feel into that, there's something very, very tender and beautiful about walking through the day, moving through the day, driving through the day, loving through the day, sitting in meditation, talking, writing, dancing, singing, bathing, anointing, not screaming, unless it's at God, or Xi Jinping, or at Putin, or at the devil, or your own unrealized creativity and authenticity. Scream loud, I want to know you, lover. Rebirthing. I'm going to talk more about it. And the word bhavana, the rebirthing of bhavana. Bhavana is the Pali Buddhist word that points to the direct, deliberate, intimate, intelligent engagement of consciousness within consciousness, the discernment, the inquiry of consciousness inhabiting consciousness wisely. The Dhamma of consciousness, inhabiting consciousness proactively and wisely, authenticating our Dhamma at the confluence of consciousness in the interiority of consciousness. Knowing consciousness on the terms of consciousness, knowing the energetic colors of consciousness within consciousness, understanding the narratives of projection, blame, doubt, restlessness, fear, greed, delusion, false identities, ghosts, hallucinations versus realness. The taste of realness, not faux, but the taste of authentic freedom. And so this concept of bhavana, the most practical definition is mental, emotional, existential, deliberate development. On a more poetic definition, which was introduced to me by my teacher, late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, his name was Usobana. Sobana, for those of you who understand Pali, or Pali words, I should say, because I don't understand Pali fluently enough to read it, but I do understand Pali with lots of words. The word sobhana is beautiful state of mind, beautiful states of mind. So in the Buddhist psychological tradition, Abhidhamma, they have a category of SOM, states of mind, or SOCs, states of consciousness, known as Sobhana Cetasikas, beautiful states of mind. My preceptor, the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, known for his mindfulness, ardent mindfulness teachings and practice, and creating centers all over the world for people to practice freely the power of mindfulness, yet his own name, given to him by his preceptor, was Sobhana. Beautiful states of mind. We're often given Buddhist names in Buddhist traditions as a way for us to help remember the qualities most natural, most deliberate within our definition of Dhamma in action. The development of beautiful states of mind is known as the practice of Bhavana. So we have rebirthing of Bhavana, the sculpting, shaping of being in context at the six sense doors, with an innate ability to read the intimate pulse of one's own presence, innateness of the senses. Remember, eye, ear, nose, body, tongue, mind, multi-level awarenesses of frequencies within each of those sense dimensions, the innateness of those vortexes, if you will, to feel more authentically and to feel more wisely true nature or true reality. That's the nature of Bhavana, the beautification of consciousness, the desire of the heart, if you will, to realize its own context. We're inhabiting body and mind based upon the primordial flow of becoming. We don't know why we were born. But here we find ourselves waking up into form, into body at different stages of life. And the Dhamma is the direct, deliberate vocation of studying consciousness on an experiential level for the purpose of freeing it from fear, greed, and delusion at the six sense doors through the three streams: the thoughts, the speech, and the actions. So, rebirthing and Bhavana. The third dimension of presence and realness for me is known by the word Parami. So I have rebirthing of Bhavana for the development, the elevation around the well with Ukundala of what constitutes transformational realness. Transformational realness. Parami. Again, a concept introduced to me by my late teacher, the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita. These were late-stage Dhamma teachings provided for me at the time. There were four of us actually. My beloved Dhamma sister ally friend, Dr. Janine Davies, and Derek Kay was there, and Ma Vajrayani and Ukundala, rebirthing a figure, U Kinline, my beloved brother U Kinline, in this sacred environment. And Sayadaw introduced to all of us at that time the concept of Parami. And of course you've read it and you've heard about it, but he rarely ever talked about this concept, and it's states of excellence. So we have rebirthing of Bhavana and Parami, 10 constituents of consciousness that are known as the most excellent or the most beautiful states, the sobhanas of the heart, the beauties of the heart. You can develop your own 10. Moral integrity, unconditional generosity, renunciation of fear, truth-telling feeling, khanti, patience, metta, loving kindness, nekama, renunciation, determination, courage, upekkha, equanimity, and why not include karuna, compassion, and any number of other states of mind or paramis that you wish to include in your rebirthing of existence in bhavana at the 6 sense doors, through the 3 streams of experience, in the evolution, the development of parami. And here I use the South African concept in conjunction with the Buddhist Pali word Ubuntu and Bodhisattva, the fusion. Desmond Tutu is the one who introduced me to Ubuntu. Ubuntu, the emotionality within consciousness that is the antithesis of projection. Projection implies overlaying upon other something that's inaccurate to the other being. Ubuntu is the authentication, the clarity of a lens that's anti-projected, that feels inseparability as intimately natural to life. The Ubuntufication of space. I am in flow rhythm, in this shared intimacy of cognitive connectivity. I become more of who I am through my relatedness and my feelings about you and your relationship to me. Bodhisattva, I cannot be who I am without being deliberately engaged in bringing my Dhamma to the context of all other dimensions of something called other. The confluence of self and other, self with subselves, self in forms, self in cosmos, self in infinity. Selflessness within context, all dimensions of the identity complex to grow from is called the Ubuntufication or the Bodhisattvification of shared space. Mutuality, intimate mutuality. Rebirthing, Bhavana, Parami, Ubuntufication, the Bodhisattvification of space. And the last, this is a very unique concept for me that's come up, is I'm calling it the Nibbanafication. What I mean by that in the Buddhist Pali word is, I would call it a liberated freedom. I wanted to say an unconditional freedom, but a liberating freedom. Freedom is never free unless we keep freeing it. It's not like some static state, obviously. And so we must understand the Dhamma intelligence, if you will, of ways in which we string accoutrements to our freedom, conditions on our freedom, weight on our freedom. I'm free so long as I have X amount of money in the bank. I'm free so long as I have air in my tires. I'm free so long as I have the quality of food that I really need. I was reading today in the Irrawaddy about many of the political prisoners in Myanmar, and some of them have been released, and describing what their nearly 5 months of incarceration, interrogation, and torture were like, and how they, in some cases, kept their own rebirthing, Bhavana, Parami, Ubuntufication, and Nibbanafication in process. Essentially, how they kept their mindful intelligence and dynamic lucidity under such extreme conditions. That's what I mean about Nibbana, the liberating of freedom, not to be waylaid by the pretense of denied privilege and profit. And I'm happy so long as I live in this exquisite nature reserve in this temple in Kula. But, you know, all of a sudden, it's no longer the castle, now it's the dungeon, or it's whatever it is along the road of the wreckage of existence. And so Nibbana here, and the Nibbanafication of presence and realness, is just like me with Ukundla around the well back in 1979. The liberating of ugly from consciousness, the liberating of shame, the the Nibbanafication of this authenticity that we share, the liberation of the kiss, the reimagination of romance, the expansion of the erotic, the remarriaging, if you will, of life with our partner, the never getting old, always being born again with our lover. There's so many ways that we could talk about it that are mundane and poetic and crass and elegant. And whatever's personal to you in the play of your own presence and realness, realness, realness. I can be radically crass at times and unthinkably dark in my satire. I'm going to be filming my new book called Extinction X-Rated. My beloved new friend here, Tim, has volunteered, and we're talking about how to best craft the setting to spend 5 days. I cannot wait to dive into the reading. This book was meant to be filmed, and this gentleman here on this sacred nature reserve in this incredible temple has shown up like a god brother to do and deliver here at the precipice of mortality around the well in 2021. I'm going to do it, God willing. I cannot wait. And that's the only reason I'm not doing my live streams, because I love doing self-therapy. And I can't wait to be in person with these few boys and girls for July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I can't wait to do a global outreach to the entire world. Please invite everyone. This is our moment to develop shared presence and to be as real and dimensional in our rebirthing, our Bhavana, our Parami, our Ubuntu, our Bodhisattva, and our Nibbanafication of shared space. Unconditional freedom in the rapport with self and other. Think about that. And yes, it's messy and dirty and filled with crevasses down into the deep, dark shadow of that convulsive, invenerating, unrecognized, uncharted trauma. But sometimes we just jump over the crevasse and go, bye, trauma. I'm going to go into the Nibbanafication. There is no way to excavate infinite historical sufferings. Existence isn't a grave dig to exhume eternity of the skeletons of our own dysfunction and the cruelties enacted upon our own carcass of being. It's to rise in the radiance, right, of the beloved of the light. It's not about being positive. It's also about being humble to the inveterating scars. And I have them. I'm still there, driven by my conditions. But at the same time, I'm tweaking onto presence and realness. Rebirthing R, Bhavana B, Parami P, Ubuntufication U, and Nibbanafication N, RBPUN. Write the acronym down. Memorize it in our heart, soul. Bring it to the forefront of our emotionality, our senses. Let us abide as sisters and brothers and artistic Dhamma savants in the awakening of Dhamma for the liberation of freedom. I'll close here. Thank you for being in my heart, in my life. Thank you for the gifts of your support. May I invite you, especially allies and people close to me, may I invite you, prioritize the weekend, 2 2-hour periods of time. Hang in there, stand in there, sit in there. Allot those 10 to noon and 1 to 3 periods on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, wherever you are in the world. Invite your friends, invite your tribe, put it up on your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook. Let's expand the World Dharma Sangha. You know, life is what we bring to each other. And I do believe that realness and presence are best enacted for me, not with strangers and struggle and complexities and war machines and all the various things that go down in the world that the media hits us over the head with and in the heart and tries to co-opt us through the injection of their propaganda and their pornography. Enough. This weekend is enough. Put a big firewall around the world and create some sacred time for yourself. May I invite you? Take the time. Come out Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for as much time as you can invest, and let's break bread and anoint each other with our own truths, with our own discoveries. I'm going to share some techniques in meditation, some writing exercise. There'll be some question and answers that I repeat the questions. Write in your questions through direct messenger or email. And send in issues that you'd like to have me address or to talk about. I'm really looking forward to this weekend, and with your support and your participation, let's take it higher at this time on planet Earth, at this time when totalitarianism is trying to get the best of our freedom, and let's rise up in mutual intimacy and rebirth in Bhavana, Parami, Ubuntufication, Nibbanafication of presence in deep realness. And let us keep alive the innateness of the sacred. We're alive. And what will we do with the preciousness of a full breath? So from my heart to yours, thank you for being in my life. God willing, I hope to see you tomorrow morning for the final live stream before the weekend, here from Maui at 9:30 in the morning. Have a great day. Thank you.